Baruchim Aboim b'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Yirgin Shir Torah Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. All the men who came in person, all the women and there's Noshim, everyone listening through the phone or watching through the stream. Baruchim Aboim. I'd like to give a big yeshikach to Mr. and Mrs. Mendy Pomerantz for sponsoring tonight's shir. Cover the Rov. The Rov meaning Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, tonight's darshan. Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, Rav agudas yisroel, Flatbush Rosh Yeshiva, Mesivta Sholom Shachne. And whoever would like to have the great schools is sponsoring a shir called Irgun Shirei Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. I covered the call in Rabbi Moshe Weinberger Shlita for tonight's Rosh. I'm sure I deserve it. Rabbi Weinberger.
On a quiet Tuesday night in the summer in the city, where you can hear your footsteps echoing down the streets, and there's a kibbutz of Chashiv Yidden that come together to mechazik each other in Torah and Yerushalayim. What a nachas ruach that is for the Rabbi Shalom. What a special chus Irgun Shirei Torah has to be able to put this together with wonderful darshanim who come just to inspire others, but I come to inspire myself. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to put machshava into everyday life. So David is a very, very successful person. He goes to college, goes to university, he goes to medical school, becomes a specialist, and unbelievable, successful, married, rich, talented. All his medical resources are in demand, tremendous. Then there's another fellow, sits and learns Torah, Yom V'Layla, writes Svarim, is picked as a Rosh Yeshiva, and zoich to thousands of Talmidim. Indeed, success stories. They worked hard. They deserve it. Then there's another fellow who also went to college. He also went to university. He's always talented. But somehow, he never reached what we would call the pinnacle of success. Another fellow, Harvard learning and worked so hard, never got a stellar, never got a position which he always dreamed about. And we think he's not a success. Can those first two people honestly think that they deserve it more than someone else? Can they look at their friends and say, we deserve it? I remember a number of years ago, there was a magazine that came out, it was called Success. It didn't last very long. It always had the picture on the front of some wealthy entrepreneur who somehow amassed millions of dollars, and that is success. In the secular, mundane world, people say, we deserve it. I walked in once to my manal, and I said, I deserve a raise. That lasted for about 5 minutes till he explained to me why he did not deserve my raise. But I thought I deserved a raise. But deserving by a Yid is a whole different entity. Steht in last week's parsha, Vayar Pinchas, and Pinchas saw, Roa Maisa v'niska halacha. He saw what was going on, remembered halacha. Shuri Das tries to encapsulate what happened over here. There's 24,000 people who are living immorally with the daughters of Midian and Moav. There's 24,000 people who are eating zivchei meis and bowing down to the Baal Pa'ar. In the Lashon, the Gemara, it's Andrula Musya. It's havoc. It's mayhem. Moshe and Aaron are standing in front and crying. So, all of a sudden, this Yid comes and he says, one second. I only know one thing to look at the world. It's all about halach. It's all about Torah. So someone's going to come to me and say, Pinchasel, you're going to kill this one guy, Zimri ben Salu and Kozbi Basur, and you think that's going to solve the issues? Everyone's going crazy. Pinchas says, Vayam Pinchas, Ramaisa Deniska halacha. He only saw Torah. That's called a behirus emunah, a clarity in emunah. A person that reaches any modicum of success. A person that in any way has atzlacha. Does he really believe it's because he deserved it? The person cannot find epizechet. Yeah. In the Goyish Welt, everything's totally on what you did and what you accomplished and how hard you worked. What a danger it is that we should begin to think like that. To us, we need the Riyah of Pinchas. We have to see everything in the light of the Rabbeinu Shalom did it. And don't think you ever deserve anything. I saw a nifledike vart from Mesivta Sholom. He says there's 3 things that a person has to have to daven to Hashem. Listen to these 3 things. The first thing he says is that a person has to know, as a kumtim golnisht, you don't deserve anything. Everything is a chesed from Hashem Yisbarach. The whole topic tonight was influenced by a story that I saw. That a lady who didn't have any children came to Reb Shlomo Zalman. And she says, I do everything right and I try so hard. Why can't I have a child? So you would think he would give her a bracha, he would comfort her. And he says to her, the Rabbeinu Shalom owes you nothing. Startling words. You want something? Do something extra. She did, and she was like the children. But the line that he said that Hashem owes you nothing. I remember when I was a bach in yeshiva. I had a Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Eisenberg, his old Gesundheit. And it was the night of Rosh Hashanah or the night of Yom Kippur, I don't remember. And he took us into a dark room. And he started saying over and over again, Kidalam u'charoshim dafaknu d'losecha. We have nothing. We own nothing. We don't control anything. And anything we have is here today and gone tomorrow. We came out on this world with a purpose. And that purpose is what we have to accomplish. And it's not that Hashem owes us anything just because we did a mitzvah. That's what we're here for. If someone breathes, you want a reward? If you do a mitzvah, you expect your reward right away? We have to feel that everything Hashem gives us is a matnas chinam. And that creates in us a whole different type of life. Rav Hutner says a very interesting pshat in that which we are saimech geula litfilo. Kol yisroel and Shemay Nesri. And he points out something which is really, really interesting. We brought the Korban Pesach, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu proclaimed, we are no longer the servants of Paroi. We are the servants of the Rabbeinu Shalom. Good. We didn't have any mitzvahs. We didn't have anything to do. So what does it mean we're servants of the Rabbeinu Shalom? The servants to do what? The answer is, a servant is not someone who does just what the master told him. The servant, everything he does is calculated in the service of the master. So you're eating, you're drinking, you're sleeping, you're talking is all for one purpose. How could I serve Hashem Yisbarach like this? This is what it means to be a servant of Hashem. So when you say in Shemay Nesri, okay, Hashem, give me wisdom. if you're Saimach Kula L'Tefillah, and you know that Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim to be his servant, so when you're asking for knowledge, you're not asking for a personal purpose. You're asking for knowledge to serve Hashem. You're asking for health to serve Hashem. The Geula and the Tefillah travels through everything you do in everyday life. And das is Ayid. And that's because you understand that everything is a chesed. If you've ever spoken to, or you've ever met anybody that went through a real serious illness, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu granted them life, their perspective becomes different. They realize that they're existing because of the chesed of Hashem. Now, I'm fond of saying this over. You'll forgive me if I say it one more time. But I was always so amazed by this vart from the Gaon's brother. The Gemara says that Rabbi Baravu was very, very poor. Very poor. Eliyahu Navi used to talk to him. So he obviously was a special person. And Eliyahu Navi asked him a question in one of the difficult portions of the Talmud. And he said, I'm too poor. I don't have the strength to learn that part. So Eliyahu says, okay, come with me. So he takes him into Gan Eden. And he says, there's trees in Gan Eden. Take the leaves off the trees. Put them in your jacket, in your coat. And the leaves, you can imagine, how much would you pay for a leaf in Gan Eden? A lot of money. As he's walking out with his satchel, a baskel comes out and says, who's eating up his olam haba? Everybody knows if you get your portion of olam haba, right, that you're taking it away. So he quickly shakes out his coat. The Gemara continues, however, his coat had a great smell. He sold his coat for a huge amount of money, and he gave his money to his sons-in-law, hint, hint, to anybody who's in the crowd, who's in that parsha. What was Eliyahu Navi thinking? Every little boy knows the story of Chanina ben Daisa and the foot of the table, and that they took away from his Gan Eden. Everyone knows that. So what was Eliyahu thinking when he told him to take the leaves? Secondly, I'll tell you something. If there's trees and there's leaves, there's probably fruit also. Can you imagine what a peach from Gan Eden would taste like? A shemaka pear from Gan Eden. So why did he tell him when he take the leaves? Why not take a fruit? So the Gaon's brother says like this. He says, Schar mitzvah b'al malaka. You're not getting the schar of a mitzvah. Every person has a tree. There's a yankel tree and a shmerel tree and a beryl tree. And the fruit is the mitzvah. You don't get that in this world. What's a leaf? Steht der Pasuk in Tehillim, Aleu lo yibo. A leaf should not become withered. What's the leaf of a Talmid Chacham? His everyday life. His everyday life that he lives al pi Torah, with the bracha, with no lashon hara, al pi Torah, that's the leaf that protects the fruit. So Eliyahu thought like this. A mitzvah in this world, you can't get the schar. But if I live like a Jew, if I live like a Yid, everyday life, that's schar I can have in this world. On that, the Baskol came out and said, no, even that is so great, you can't have that schar in this world. Because everything in this world is from the Rabbi Shalom and has to be in the service of the Rabbi Shalom. Just as an aside, I had a Rebbe, his name was Rabbi Yitzchak Notice, and I said this over, and he said, okay, the fruit is the mitzvah, the leaves are everyday life, what's the smell? He got to sell the smell. So what is the smell? Thank you very much. He says, you know what the smell is? Midas. Midas could be get the schar in this world. For being a mensch, midas, that's in this world. So everything we have from Hashem is a chesed. There was a fellow, very wealthy fellow, and people would come to Mishulachim day and night, and his mansion was on the first floor, and his offices were on the second floor. And every Meshulach would come in and say, so where is the fellow I get the money from? So they decided to put up a sign, shouldn't have to ask, the boss. So you walked into the house, and it said the boss. Then there was a staircase that said the boss. And then there was another sign that said the boss. And you went into the boss, and the boss gave the Meshulach money. Meshulach walks in, follows the sign, the boss, invite to the boss. And he comes in, and the rich fellow, forget, beautiful, Talmid Chacham, generous. He says, what can I do for you? He said, you're a big chutzpahnik. Imagine a Meshulach coming into, you're a chutzpah. So why am I a chutzpah? I was told there's only one boss in the world, and that's Rabbi Moshe. Why are you calling yourself the boss? Everything Hashem gave you was given to you that you should help other people. Nothing is really yours. So first the fellow wanted to call the security guard. He had a security guard. And he said, no, you know what? Someone finally tells me the truth. Good gesagt. How much do you want? And he gave him 10 times the amount. Calls in the security guard. He said, I want you to change all the signs. Instead of the boss, I want you to put up the manager. The manager. No more boss. He's manager. Great. Now he had a goita who was working by him. That means a non-Jewish lady. And she was stealing. Saw in the cameras. Called her in, showed her the proof, fired her. She had a husband who was encouraging her to do this. Heard about this, he's going to get the guy. Puts the gun in his pocket, motorcycle, down to the house. Past the security guard. Where's the boss? And he's a sign manager. And he runs into the man. He says, where's the boss? So the manager, she goes, yeah. She runs up to the next floor. Meantime, they got the guy and everything's okay. That's the difference between being a boss and a manager. Everything is a matnas chinam. The second thing you know when you start davening is Hashem can do anything. There's nothing he can't do. And the third thing you have to know is only Hashem can do it and no one else. Zok the Koshen Tzamagid or the Mesivta Sholom, I'm not sure which one, that we have now arrived at the understanding of the first 3 brachas of Shemay Nesri. And this changed my davening. The first one is Goimel Chasodim Tovim. Everything is a gift from Hashem. So when I stand in front of the Rabbi Shalom, it's Rachamim V'Sachnunim of the Hamakim. I don't come to Rabbi and say, I deserve this, I did this. It's not because you can't think of any Averas that make you not deserving. Somebody told me today something terrific. I went up to a friend of mine and said, here's what I'm talking about tonight. What do you say about this topic? He says to me, one thing, I was thinking something else. Yosef Tzadik, 17 years old, in Mitzrayim, the most immoral country of its time, and maybe forever, we don't know. And it is way separated from his parents, from Yiddishkeit, and he's challenged with this great Messiah. Vayonas achutza, and he runs outside and thinks, Rabbi Shalom, you owe me one, no? 12 years in prison. 12 years. And even at the end, he's stuck in Mitzrayim. Years later, 210 years later, the Yidden are coming out of Mitzrayim and they come to the Yam Suf. They come to the Yam Suf. And the Yam doesn't want to split. Ra Yam Vayonis. What did it say? Yam Ra Vayonis. Ra Roina Shel Yosef. They saw the arm of Yosef. He was Yonas, and now the Yam was Yonas too. What was the schar for Yosef? 210 years later, 600,000 plus nefashos was saved with the Yam splitting. Everybody said, where's my schar? I had 12 years in prison. You don't think like that. It's not the way to work. Rabbi Hashem has a cheshbon. Everything's a cheshbon. There's no such thing as I deserve it, I did. What a simcha that gives to a person life. People walk around complaining. Sekum mechdem, sekum mechdem. Imagine, Boaz goes ahead, puts his whole reputation on the line because there's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, Moayavi v'loy Moavis. And therefore he goes ahead and he marries Rus. You don't think he deserved to see the nachas of Rus's child? He dies the next day. And everyone's saying, aha, he was wrong. What comes from Bayaz? Nothing less than Mashiach. So what do you mean you deserve? You understand the ways of Hashem? Goy mel chasodim toivim. Goy mel chasodim toivim. You know, it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes the Yidden. He compares them to the stars. Every star is a name and a number. What's the difference between a name and a number? What's the difference? A name is individual. Moshe, Chaim, Shmuel, that's an individual. A number means you're part of a tzibur. You can't be a number by yourself. You have to have a 17, a 19, an 18, and a 20. A Yid, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to develop who you are. But at the same time, you have to realize you're a number. Rabbi Hashem has this myriadic look of the entire Bria. And how you fit in is the Rabbi Shlomo's decision. And sometimes you think, well, I do A, B, C, and I deserve. Hashem says you deserve. And everything you'll get in its right time, its right place. But right now, this is the way I need you to serve me. It's a fellow, very sick boy. And he was on a lot of tubes. And they wanted to disconnect him. What kind of quality of life is that? It's not a quality of life. So the doctors had a meeting. One from a doctor, everyone fry. Everyone said, let's disconnect. So the from a doctor asks, I want everybody to rate their quality of life on a 1 to 10. Okay? So Sam, Dr. Sam, what do you say? My wife left me, my children, 6. The next doctor says, a 5. Okay? He says, let's go ask the boy. He goes to this Jewish boy, connected by tubes. And he asks him, tell me, what's your quality of life? And he says, 10. Because I wake up in the morning and I could say Moida Ani to my creator. And that makes life a 10. I have a Scrabble game at home. Everybody plays Scrabble? You ever wind up with A, E, I, O, U's and you don't know what to do? But you got to play with the deck that you have. And the Rebbeinu Shem knows exactly what you have to have. That's the Goyim Chasadim Toivim of the Rebbeinu Shem. Nothing's coming to you. Everything's a matana. The second thing you have to know in davening is Hashem can do anything. And when we come to the point that we understand what tefillah is, I want to tell you the medrash, and I'll do the agudas shot in the medrash. Ra Yaakov Esav ba mirachik. Yaakov saw Esav coming from far away. Talain of Lamoraim. He picks his eyes up to Shemaim and he said, Yancha Hashem b'yom tzara Yisragev Hashem alakei Yaakov. Frekted to the market 3 kashas. He saw him coming merachik. What difference does it make where he saw him coming from? Second of all, it sounds like he had a choice. Talain of Mimoraim. What else should he have done? And third of all, if Yaakov's talking, it shouldn't say Yisagev Hashem Elokei Yaakov, because Yaakov is the one that's talking. So Dum Namag is a mechadish achidush, and he says, B'derech hatava, Yaakov could have defeated Esav with his 400 men. Yehuda, Levi, Shimon, they're powerful fellows. They're ready to destroy the whole Mitzrayim. They could have won. Yaakov raw Esav b'mirachik. He saw Esav coming in the future. He saw Esav down in the generations. And he said, what's going to be over there? They can't rely on their physical strength. Talain of Lamoraim. So he decided that now also the victory can't be b'derech hateva. And he said the cry that Klal Yisrael cries to the generations, Yanch Hashem b'yom tzara Yisagev Hashem alakei Yaakov. Alakei Yaakov, that's the cry of Klal Yisrael. A person understands what tefillah is, and what tefillah can do. There's a fellow whose name was Ariel Sharon. Ariel Sharon, we know who he was, prime minister. And one day, stroke, 7 years he was a vegetable. 7 years. And they asked the doctor, was there ever anybody who recovered from this? And they said, yeah, there's one Yid in Yerushalayim. It was the same situation, and he recovered. So Sharon's children went to meet this fellow. And they go into this little house in Yerushalayim, and they knock on the door, and the fellow's a little bit of a limp. And they said, which doctor did you go to? Who did this for you? And he says, what I did, you can't do. What I have, you can't have. So why not we'll put on tefillin? We'll keep Shabbos. He says, you don't understand. I had 100 children and great-grandchildren that were davening the whole time. You don't have that. The Rebbeinu Shem is a Mechayim Meisim, he's a Reifei Chaylim. I don't know if I deserved it or not. Because we don't deserve anything. We have a chatoyim. We're not any better than the next person. But the Rebbeinu Shem has a cheshbon, he gave us one way out. Tefillah, if we understand everything's telling Rebbeinu Shem, we can persevere. And the third thing, which is Pashut, Ata Kadosh, Shimcha Kadosh, Ukadashim Mechol Yom Yalucha Sela. Everybody knows, even the Kadoshim, even the Malachim, that it's only the Rebbeinu Shalom who can do it. Tell you another Maisa. I think it's Niftik Maisa. And here's something that we do struggle with, but I am a good fellow and I do mitzvahs and Maisim Tovim. And why do I have to suffer? And that's because we have a very narrow vision of the world. And we can't see Olam Haba. They say on the Chafetz Chaim that to him, Olam Haba was like you open a door and he was there. And we don't get to always see the schar. On the other hand, if we understood what we were investing, I'll tell you something interesting. My mother went to a chasna a number of years ago, many years ago, $120 a couple. Then would be like $1,000 a couple today. And the people were eating by the smorgasbord like you never saw. And one lady ate, and then she had to regurgitate. And she did. And then she went back and she was eating again. And my mother turned around and said, Mrs. Fumberstein, that's a good name, Mrs. Fumberstein, what are you doing? And she said, he doesn't have another daughter to marry for 3 years. We have to chaperite. That's fantastic. So sometimes we think we don't deserve, we don't realize what we're really doing. I'll tell you a niflik Maisa. There's a fellow in Haifa. He was 80, 90 years old. He was still working, driving a broken down truck. I want to tell you the Maisa of this fellow. This fellow's name was Donat. And Donat, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, the Ministry of Absorption gave him shares in a bus company. Shares in a bus company. It wasn't called Eged yet. It was a different name, different name. So he had share, what was it called? Share, one of these names. Good. You say it much better than I would say it. Yeah, something like that. Some good Israel. And then they merged with another company, and the profits would have been great. He could have lived in Menucha. But he realized they were driving on Shabbos, and he didn't know was he allowed to take profits from his shares in the company. So he went to his Rav. His Rav said, I can't paskin you. Go to the Chazon Ish. He went to Bnei Brak, which was a long trip in those days, half-a-day trip from Haifa to Bnei Brak. And the Chazon Ish is so sick, they said you could just see him after Mincha. He walks into the Chazon Ish after Mincha. The Chazon Ish is in bed. And he tells the Chazon Ish what's going on, and the Chazon Ish says, Efsha, you cannot take money from the company. He goes to the company, he rips up his shares, and the rest of his life, he sold laundry detergent from house to house till he got an old jalopy to keep his laundry detergent. And then when that wasn't no gay anymore, because there was stores, so then he decided to become a janitor. One day he's walking in a very rich section of Haifa, and he meets a friend who used to have shares in this company. And he says to him, look what you did. Look how you're still working, and we have mansions and cars and pools and everything nice. And he smiles and walks away. The Bachram come to Yeshiva next day, he's all happy. He says, why are you happy? And he says, I met this person, and this is what he told me. And he doesn't know that tonight my son is making a Siyam HaShas because he knows Shas Baal Peh. And I'm going to be sitting in front with all the Gedolim Rosh Yeshivas. Does he deserve it? I don't know if he deserves it. I don't know if he deserves it. But there's no such thing that Hashem doesn't have a cheshbon, and Hashem doesn't know what's going on. There were three Gedolim, three great Malachim. David, Asa, and Chizkiah. Three Gedolim. David was mispalel. We want to go to war, we want to win. Asa was mispalel. We want to sing Shira, and Hashem, you fight for us. And Chizkiah says, I want to go to sleep, and you, Hashem, take care. So at first glance, who's the biggest Maimon? Chizkiah. Chizkiah says, and go to sleep, and he's going to win. Chizkiah's the biggest Maimon. Zogan and Mefarshim, no, it's just the opposite. Sometimes a person does something, and he really thinks that he did it. So David HaMelech says, we could fight, and I know it's you. Good. Asa says, no. If we fight, we're going to think it's us. And therefore, we're going to sing Shira, and we'll know it's you. Chizkiah HaMelech says, the only way that Klal Yisrael is going to know it's you and they have nothing to do with it is if they go to sleep and you make victory for them. There has to be such a klarkeit that it's not us. Savannah Moirdik is Farnai in the beginning of Baloiska. And he says like this, there's a left side to Menorah and there's a right side to Menorah. But they all have to face El Mol Pnei HaMenorah, to the center. What does that signify? What is the right side of the menorah? What is the left side? And what does it mean, El Mol Pnei HaMenorah? She says the right side of the menorah represents those Yidden who sit and learn Torah whole day and avodas Hashem. That's the right side. The left side of menorah is those who are Isaac B'chayisha, they do business, balabatim, they make out. But there's one trick. Everybody has to be facing El Mol Pnei HaMenorah. You could learn Torah and you're facing the wrong direction. You think it's you. You think you're great because you're learning. And therefore, you're not facing El Mol Pnei HaMenorah. The Balabas can be making a panosa and he also thinks it's him. The Kunz in Klal Yisrael is that everybody has to know El Mol Pnei HaMenorah. We have to always see that it's Rabbi Shalom who's doing the Avodah and not us. And when you come to that, then it's Mikshah. Then it's one bar of gold. It's one Klal Yisrael. One Klal Yisrael with Emunah, Behiras Emunah, that else is the Bashef. In my camp, I go to camp in the summer, and there's t-shirts. Different t-shirts. My grandmother bought me this. Miami, Florida. The best t-shirt. Just visiting. Just visiting. It's a t-shirt that puts our whole lives in perspective. We're just visiting. And we're just visiting. We know we're totally in the Bayri Island. So a lady got sick. A woman was sick. And her children came over to her and said, Mommy, why you? Why you? And she said, I don't understand. When I got married with a chashuv ben Torah, I didn't ask why me. When I had children that learned Torah, I didn't ask why me. But now when I'm sick, I'm going to ask why me. I'm going to try to figure out the Rabbeinu Shlom's cheshbon. Can't be such a thing. And that's the way we have to live. One of the challenges that we have is called iyun tefillah. It's very hard. I find davening in a way harder than learning. In learning, there's a sequence, there's a kasha, there's a teretz, there's a raya, there's a thought process. In davening, it's leiv, and the person is supposed to be ma'ayin as a davening and understand what he's saying. Yet there's a Gemara that says that somebody who's an ayin in his tefillah says terrible things about him. So Tosfos asked the kasha, what does iyun tefillah mean? And Tosfos says, iyun tefillah, the understanding of tefillah, spending time on tefillah, that's a davar tov. But if after you daven, you tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why didn't you listen to my tefillah? That's an iyun tefillah that's not good. As much as we daven, as much as we cry, and must be betzach, the emunah, Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, Vateach B'Hashem Chesed Yevoivenu. The someone who's Vateach B'Hashem doesn't even see the ra. And sometimes when a person hits that low point, I don't know if anybody here, Rabbi Krohn once said a great line. He says, everybody has something that you don't know about. Everybody's going through some type of tzara. But that tzara might be your tachlis in life to overcome that chasar. Rav Hai Goyen was very, very wealthy. And the Tov and Hatzlacha shined on him unbelievable. Every year Pesach, he used to get new dishes. So he would send one of his avadim or servants to go be toivel the dishes. And one year he dropped some dishes. He didn't tell his boss. He was scared to tell Rav Hai Goyen. The next year when he'd be toivel the dishes from the year before came back. And he told Rav Hai Goyen with such a simcha, now I'll tell you the truth, I dropped some dishes, the dishes came back. Rav Hai Goyen was very upset. After that, Rav Hai Goyen started losing his parnasa, and he got sick. And they said the only thing that could cure him, he should take a pot with 7 chickens, boil it down to 1 teaspoon, and the power of that chicken soup is going to make him healthy. And they did it, and they borrowed money, and they bought the chickens, and they cooked it. And as the soup was being given to him, a fly came and fell in the soup. And how are you going to remember Simcha? So they asked him about the contradictory reactions. And he said sometimes a person gets to such a level of taiv that level of taiv means he can't get any better, he's got to go down. And it was like a warning from Hashem. And sometimes a person hits rock bottom, and he says, now, Rabbeinu Shalom, I know things are going to get better. But if a person has that bitachon, that he knows that he's being tested. There's a Gemara that says, a Medrash, with 2 ganovim. One died, and went to Gehenna. The second one died, and the Gehenna guy sees that he's taking him upstairs. So he goes to the guard in Gehenna, and he says, how much did he pay you? I also would like first class accommodations. Lately, if your economy on the airplane is very, very hard, so he would also like an upgrade. So he says, it's not money. He says, what happened? He says, when you died, you were put on the side of the road. No one wanted to bury you. And for 3 days, you stood there. And when your friend saw this, he did tshuva. So he said, fine, I'll do tshuva. So he told him, 1 second. Don't you know that only someone who prepares Erev Shabbos gets to eat on Shabbos? And don't you know that only someone who prepares on dry land and then he goes on the ocean has what to eat? And don't you know that if you're going to a desert, Only if you prepare in the city, you have it in the desert. Ah! He rubbed it in. One muscle, a second muscle, a third muscle. What was he telling him? He's telling him like this. We don't know what Olam Haba is. Different people have different musagim of Olam Haba. Some people understand Olam Haba is Yom Shekulei Shabbos. It's Yom Shekulei Shabbos. It's Einig, it's sitting with the Shechina, it's beyond anything you could imagine. Some people say, listen, Olam Haba is also ganz good. Olam Haba is also ganz good. I'm sure Olam Haba is great too, but Olam Haba is good also. And some people, you tell them, in Olam Haba, there's going to be Daf Yomi Shir every day for 10 hours straight. And then is Yerushalmi. And the fellow says, I don't know, not for me. It doesn't matter what you musik of Olam Haba is. Whatever you musik of Olam Haba is, that's where the ik is going to be. That's eternity. So what were you thinking? If you thought Olam Haba was Shabbos, you should prepare. And even you thought, there's Yaboshin, there's Yam, they're both parts of the universe, you should have prepared. And even if you thought Olam Haba is a midbar, you should have prepared. The greatest preparation a person can have is to have Olam Haba in this world. And Olam Haba in this world means as Malep mit the Shechina da. What does that mean? That means a person who in this world is able to fathom and live a life of Yehesh Me Rabba Mavarach, he's in Gan Eden in this world. It's a different world. And that person, Memela, is Eicht Olam Haba. There's a Mayridik Mishnah. The Mishnah says like this. There's 5 things don't get Olam Haba. Machalas HaKodshim. You don't care if Kodshim makes some English. Ma'am Pnei Chavei Barabim. You embarrass your friend. Mavazah Samoyedis. Mavazah Yontif. Mefer Brisa Shel Avram Avinu. Magal Upon Torah. You don't treat the Torah properly. You say false pshat. These 5 things ain't lechelik le'em haba. Why things don't chelik le'em haba? Why no chelik le'em haba? These 5 things. There's one thing in the world which is so subtle, and that's called kedusha. You try to tell a guy, this day is kaddish. He doesn't feel what's the holiness of a day. Tell him this is something sacred. To him, it's just like, okay, it was used for a big purpose. But to actually feel the mussar of the kedusha, that's something that a yid, that's Olam Haba. So there's 5 things that a person has to know that are Kodesh in this world. One is Kodshim, Karbonis, Behemoths, a Stende for a Beis Medrash, or not Kodesh. These are things. And if a person is Machal that, he doesn't have a musig of Kedusha. The next thing is time. Yontif. Yontif is a Kedusha. I was thinking once in L'chodoidi, we say, L'chodoidi l'kos kalep ne Shabbos nekablo. We start with time. Shama V'zoch talks about Shabbos. Likra Shabbos talks about Shabbos. All of a sudden, we talk about Yerushalayim. Mikdash Melachim Melucha. The whole Snarmi off his Zayri, like Sevayshiyam, and then we remember it's Shabbos. What happened? The answer is, we're so beaten from a week. And when Shabbos comes, we get the appetite of Kedusha. We want Kedusha's Hamakim too. We want Kedusha of the place. The feeling of Kedusha, the appetite of Kedusha, gives us an appetite for Kedusha's Hamakim as well. And what's a Yid? So if a person mavazes Hamoyedis, even Chalamoyed, he doesn't understand Kedusha's Zman. And if he's Ma'am Pnei Chavei Barabim, he doesn't understand the Kedusha of a Yid. He doesn't understand what a tzelem of a Yid is. How could you mavaz a Yid? How can you vamish somebody with such a neshama? Mefer Brisa Shel Avram Avinu, the cash we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Umagala Bodem B'Torah, if he's missing the essence of Kedusha, he cannot get Olam Haba. Ein lo chelik l'Olam Haba. But when a person's able to feel Kedusha in this world, a person able to feel Shechina in this world, a people understand there's nothing in this world that doesn't come directly from the Borei Olam. It's a different life. Our davening is different. With Torah ein of Lamarim. So when Esav is bam erachik, we're prepared. Tyre Yidden, Sekumtun's garnished. We have everything. We have everything we're supposed to have. And that is a great thing. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us all the tools, whether it be Chachma, Gevura, Oisher, lack of Chachma, lack of Oisher. Bacha once came to the Stipler complaining that he doesn't have a head for learning. Doesn't have a head. So the Stipler said, I want to tell you something. When the Chazon Ish is learning, when the Stipler is learning, Rabbi Moshe says, Shah, I want to hear this boy who's mooching and learning. I want to hear what he could do with his talents, his lack thereof. And that's what Rabbi Moshe wants to hear. Rabbi Moshe will help him. Kosh Baruch Hu made days of summer, days of introspection. He didn't want it stamped to be a time for frivolity and other things. He wants us to steig in the summer too. May Hashem give us the koyach that we should be thankful to Him. Every day we say Moedim for 5 things. Chayenu, Nishmoiseinu, Nisecha, Niflasecha, V'toivasecha. Just for our being alive, for having Kedushas Nesama, Nisim B'chol Yom in our everyday life that we live, and Niflasecha, V'toivasecha for the whole world. And we do this 15 times a day, 5 times 3. And that thankfulness gives us a different life. And Kadosh Baruch Hu will help us. We should be zeicha to see the emes be'emunah shleima. Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you. Alles gut.
Shame Yegin Shir Torah Moshe Boss, and I'd like to give a big yasher koach to Rabbi Weinberger for the very inspiring, the very chizuk v'sayrus. One thing you do deserve is to get Shirei Torah from the chashuv speakers. Call Yegin Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 to sponsor a shir and help us continue bringing these shirim to the tzibur, or email ist@yeshivanet.com for this great schus. I'd like to give a big yasher koach to Mr. and Mrs. Mendy Pomerantz for sponsoring tonight's shir to cover Rabbi Weinberger. But Anya ben Akasha, Marotz HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakes, Es Yisroel, L'Fig Hibbel, Ter Mitzvah, Shenema, Al Anoy Chofes, and Matzidke, Yagdol, Ter V'Yader.